A British dairy farmer gets roughly 28 pence for a litre of milk, less than a penny sweet from a corner shop. That same litre sits on a supermarket shelf for well over £1. While that gap has quietly widened for decades, a man who once couldn't sell a barn full of his own potatoes has built a beer brand turning over £21.3 million a year, using barley grown on the same farm the supermarkets never wanted. This is the story of how Jeremy Clarkson and Caleb Cooper went around the entire British food industry, and why the people who run that industry should be furious with themselves for letting it happen. Most people assume Clarkson's farm is a celebrity playing at agriculture. That's what his critics prefer to believe. It's also wrong. What actually happened is that Clarkson stumbled into one of the ugliest open secrets in British food, had it happen to him on camera, and spent 5 years building something decades of government reports and parliamentary debates never managed. A supply chain that actually pays British farmers fairly. To understand how he got there, you have to start with the humiliation. In year 1, Clarkson grows 16 tons of potatoes, thinking the logic is simple: grow it, sell it, make the money. Caleb, who's been farming since before he could legally drive, already knows how this ends. The supermarkets aren't interested. 16 tons is too little volume for them, but too much for a roadside honesty box. So Clarkson builds a farm shop. By the time it's finished, the potatoes have rotted. Every British farmer knows that story, not the version with a camera crew, the real one, where you spend months growing something properly and then discover no buyer will pay a price that covers what it cost you. That happens on British farms every day, and normally nobody films it. Clarkson did it by accident, and it changed everything. When that episode aired, something happened the supermarket industry didn't see coming and still hasn't reckoned with. The public watched a man lose money on his own potatoes and got genuinely angry on his behalf. The kind of angry that sends people driving an hour and a half to a shed in Oxfordshire to spend 50 quid on a candle and a jar of honey, just to feel like they'd done something. That anger became the foundation for everything that followed. With an audience, a farm, and a point to prove, Clarkson set out to sell his own beef and lamb directly to the public. Cut out the middleman, pay farmers fairly, charge customers fairly. He converted the old lambing barn into a restaurant. People queued down the lane, blocking the road, driving in from Birmingham and London just to stand on the farm. Then West Oxfordshire District Council arrived with enforcement notices. The restaurant was ruled unlawful, given 6 weeks to strip out the tables, toilets, and landscaping. The car park extension was refused. Shop products were restricted to items made on the farm or within 16 miles, putting even his own candles in a gray area. Everything he'd built to bypass the supermarket system got tangled up in planning law instead. He'd spent the money and done the work, and the council told him to start over. For most people, that's where the story ends. Scale back, live within the system. Clarkson filmed the fight instead. Every enforcement notice became an episode, every council letter a storyline. Series 2 and 3 of Clarkson's Farm, watched by millions across Britain, Australia, and America, documented the planning battle in real time, turning the council's own crackdown into one of the most effective adverts for buying direct from a farm that British television has ever aired. By the time it settled, the shop had planning permission, the car park was approved, and the restaurant dream had been redirected into a pub. Clarkson bought a rundown roadside boozer called the Windmill, near Burford, for under £1 million, renovated it, filmed the chaos for Series 4, and reopened it in August 2024 as The Farmer's Dog. Here's what no British pub had really attempted at scale. Everything on the plate is British. The beef, pork, lamb, vegetables, beer, spirits, even the cooking oil. If it wasn't grown or produced in the country, it doesn't come through the door. One Michelin-starred chef called it one of the most genuinely committed supply chains he'd seen. The pub employs over 140 people. On opening day, hundreds queued for hours, and a 360-space car park had to be built next door to cope. It's since grown a butcher's counter, a farm shop, a grab-and-go kitchen, and a bottle shop, less a pub now than a destination, built on one idea. British farmers deserve a fair price, and customers deserve to know where their food came from. Worth asking, the last time you bought beef or lamb at the supermarket, did you check the label on the back, not just the Union Jack on the front? Here's the part even a lot of fans haven't fully connected, and where this stops being a story about a pub and becomes a story about something much bigger: the beer. Hawkstone. It started in 2021 out of necessity. Farm subsidies were being cut, and Clarkson had barley, good British barley, the same commodity crop farmers have grown for generations, while getting squeezed on price by processors. Instead of selling it as a raw ingredient for almost nothing, he turned it into lager. It wasn't smooth. The first batch failed a blind taste test against a local rival. They reworked it and relaunched, and this time it caught on, quickly becoming one of the best-selling beers on Amazon. Then in 2023, a packaging fault meant some cider bottles were at risk of bursting, forcing a public safety warning. For most new drinks brands, that kind of recall is a death sentence. Instead, in the year to March 2025, Hawkstone brought in £21.3 million, up from £7.8 million the year before, nearly tripling. It's now ranked among Britain's fastest-growing private companies by the Sunday Times, and it's stocked in Waitrose, Morrisons, Sainsbury's, and over 2,000 pubs. The same supermarkets that spent decades paying grain farmers barely anything for barley now pay a premium to stock a beer made from that exact barley. Clarkson didn't lobby them or sit on a committee. He added the value himself and sold it back at a price they had to accept because their own customers were already asking for it. Now look at the whole machine together. The farm grows the barley becomes the beer sells in the pub, and the pub serves beef, pork, and lamb from British farmers who get paid fairly because Clarkson isn't skimming a supermarket's margin out of the chain. The show films all of it. Millions watch, and the people who watch travel to Oxfordshire and spend money in the shop and pub, which funds the next stage. Every part reinforces every other part. And running through the middle of it is Caleb, raised farming, knows every field and every problem before it becomes a crisis, and impossible to fake. He's proof this isn't a vanity project dreamed up in a London marketing office. It's a working farm that found a way to make the system serve farmers instead of squeezing them. Not everything is settled. In November 2024, the government announced inheritance tax changes that would leave farming families paying 40% death duties on agricultural land above £1 million, potentially forcing families to sell off half a farm to cover the bill. Clarkson led thousands of farmers on a march to Westminster and became, almost overnight, the most visible face of British farming politics. That cuts both ways. Loved by one half of the country, resented by the other, with every politician or activist looking for a target now knowing exactly where to aim. The tax fight isn't won, and this empire is more fragile than anything on the FTSE 100 ever has to be. And yet, stand back and look at the whole picture. A man who once made pennies from a shed full of rotting potatoes now runs a supply chain with a nationally known farm shop, a 140-person pub with its own car park, a beer brand doing over £21 million a year, and a farming advocacy movement that put thousands of people outside Parliament. The barley nobody wanted became a beer supermarkets now compete to stock. The beef that couldn't get a fair price now sells out of a pub where people queue for hours. The potatoes that rotted in a barn became the story that reminded a country what British food was supposed to feel like. The supermarket industry had the land, money, supply chains, and distribution, every advantage available, and spent 30 years using it to squeeze farmers for another half-penny a litre. Clarkson spent 5 years with a camera crew, a bad temper, and Caleb's actual farming knowledge, and built something that feels more real to British people than anything coming out of a distribution centre. That's not luck. That's what happens when a system leaves enough people angry for long enough, and one of them is stubborn enough to do something about it. So here's the question. Is Clarkson doing more for British farming than 30 years of government policy managed? Or is he just a very rich man who found a clever way to sell beer using other people's anger?